Good morning to all starships in the Alpha, Beta, Gamma, and Delta quadrants. This is New Frontiers, an exploration of Star Trek Strange New Worlds here on the Movers and Shakers Unlimited Network. This is your host, Josh Pritchett, and I am joined today by my partner in crime, Chris Pabon. Chris, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Buenos dias, nuestros amables oyentes. Guten Tag, bonjour. Hello, Josh, and everyone watching us. It's a pleasure to be here today. Oh, Josh, before we start, could you clean up that mess there for a second, just before we start the show? Thank you.
Which mess? I want to apologize to everybody last week. I was not able to be on the full part of the show because technical difficulties trying to broadcast from the Delta Hotel at Shore Leave, but we did have a great time there. Chris, I'm sorry you couldn't be there. I think you would have really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Josh. I had an engagement with a certain Lion King that evening, and so that took precedence.
Yes.
Incredible show, by the way, for anyone who ever has a chance to go see it.
Oh, yeah. I am very envious of the fact that you got to go see that live and in person at the Kennedy. Yes, that I've been to the Kennedy once myself for the video game conference, but I imagine seeing the Lion King there was a whole new experience.
Yeah, I mean, the main difference between the Kennedy Center and going to Shore Leave is that the Kennedy Center had AC.
Yeah, I have to agree. Yeah, I think, thankfully for that. I did actually make a comment to Robert Picardo and Robert Duncan McNeil. I said, please state the nature of the air conditioning emergency, and everybody kind of got a kick out of that one. So, well, it's been another week, and a lot of things have happened. Of course, the main thing of importance here is this week's episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds titled Charades. So, Chris, heck of an episode, huh?
I loved it. I thought it was a great episode, more so because we got to see the comedic chops of several people, including Anson Mount. And Vulcan family affairs are never an easy thing, going back to Amok time. So it would stand to reason that a engagement dinner would also go haywire almost from the start.
Yeah, we had a real meet the in-laws / guess who's coming to dinner Vulcan style. So I think without further ado, we should get into this week's recap. So let's hit it. So the episode opens with Nurse Chapel, and played by the great Jess Bush, doing a log entry about her prepping for going to the Vulcan Science Academy and, for a fellowship there that would take her off the Enterprise for a few months. Followed by a science officer's personal log by Spock, who, he's talking about, controlling his emotions after the events with the GORN last season and trying to, function in group settings. But it is clear that his mind is drifting, and as evident at one point when he's sitting down for a meeting with Captain Pike about the duty roster changes for exploring a moon in the Vulcan system called Kharkov, which apparently there was an indigenous species there that existed several thousand years before, but then abruptly disappeared. So Spock and Nurse Chapel are going on an expedition to see if they can find any trace of the civilization and what might have happened to them. And things get very dicey when they get in close to Kharkov and a wormhole erupts. And at that point, Spock's trying to get them out of there, but something happens and they end up back on the Enterprise. And apparently the shuttle had crashed, but was then mysteriously repaired, and Chapel and Spock seem all but unhurt, except Spock Spock has one little problem. He is no longer a Vulcan. And has exclaimed when he says, "What the?" And the scene cuts. Chris, what happens next?
What the indeed. So Spock is now human. And so he begins to experience all those pent up emotions that he has inside of him because, as we all know, Vulcans do have emotions, they just suppress them. They have very intense emotions. And there's no suppressing these now. And you see, so before you had seen sort of Spock interacting with the crew, like when they're sharing a joke and Spock doesn't really get it, or when Pike is trying to teach Spock how to cook. And we find out that we humans smell, at least to Vulcans, quite a bit. And so he cannot partake of the food with the relish that Pike does because he has nasal suppressors. But all of that is out the window now. He is enjoying the food Pike is cooking, and he discovers bacon, and he starts to consume bacon at a huge pace. And Pike says, "You might want to slow down there." And Spock says, rightfully so, "I'm just making up for lost time here." He's having drinks with the crew, and he is laughing, and he is downing those drinks pretty fast. And he is at meetings where he sees messes being made, and he can't take it anymore. And they have to hold him back when he says to Sam Kirk, and we do get a Sam Kirk appearance here, like, "Clean up that mess or I will end you," which leads to a conversation with La'an where La'an explains to him, "Well, you just experienced all these emotions like a teenager would." And Spock begins to describe all his emotions, including that he's beginning to have sexual feelings. And La'an in one moment kind of gets this, "Ooh, look," and steps aside. But these feelings do serve him well at one moment and kind of surprises Chapel because Chapel is feeling guilty for having been on the shuttle and being like sort of the survivor's guilt, and she's trying to find a cure for Spock, and she can't find it, and she almost misses her appointment with the Vulcan Science Academy, and the Vulcan Science Academy just totally shoots her down and just barely gives her any time. She's practiced so much and she's ready for this, and they're kind of like, "Yeah, you're human, whatever, what can you bring us?" And so then she's walking through the corridors and she sees Spock, and Spock gives her most unexpectedly a hug. And he says, "I hope that is okay. It looked like you could use that," which she obviously did need it. And then he doubles down by saying, "Yeah, Vulcans can be such jerks." And she's just like, wow. And whilst they're thinking about ways to help Spock, Una and La'an do find what seems like, for lack of a better word, a cell phone in the shuttle. And they, with Uhura's help, they use it to contact the alien entities within the wormhole, who are not the prophets, just FYI, we're not on Bajor. And, they say, remediation took place, we're sorry for the accident, but, we fixed him, all good, no need to contact us again, bye-bye. And I'm still like, what? And as they're trying to think of ways to help Spock, the unthinkable happens that they had been there as part of the exploration of the moons of Vulcan, or the planets around Vulcan and the Vulcan system. They were going to try and have a ceremonial engagement dinner with T'Pring's family, and we find out that T'Pring's mom hates Spock. And so they had used his accident to kind of postpone this. But then Spock's mom comes aboard and tells him, "Listen, they've had it. T'Pring's mom, she is T'Prill, is impossible. And so we're going to have, it's been a lot of negotiations, but we're going to have the dinner here on the ship." And Spock's like, "No." And he's got a beanie. We get the return of the beanie that we haven't seen since City on the Edge of Forever. And Pike is trying to help Spock up by saying, "No, but we're really busy here." And, Mia Kirsta once again is there as Amanda Grayson, and she says, "Something's wrong here." And then she kind of looks at Spock and says, "Take off your beanie." And he does. He sees he's human. And he's just like, "Hi, Mom." And then Amanda Grayson rightfully says, a mom just knows these things. So we are on the precipice of what is going to be a dinner to remember. Josh?
Yeah. So, meanwhile, back on sickbay, Christine is she's just been scorned by the Vulcan Science Academy. That has not gone well. So she's doubling down her efforts to reverse Spock's um, alteration, and ultimately she concludes with Mbenga that okay, we can't fix this, but the wormhole aliens hashtag Deep Space Nine can reverse this. Okay, so she enlists the aid of Ortiz and Uhura to go with her back to the wormhole and try to make contact once again with the wormhole aliens. Meanwhile, Amanda is attempting to teach Spock the finer points of subterfuge and how to lie or obfuscate the truth in this case, to kind of get around T'Pring and her parents. So they go through the rituals that are going to be involved with this Vulcan dinner. Finally, T'Pring comes aboard ahead of her parents. She wants some She wants some alone time with Spock, where she basically explains everything that's been going on, how her mother's been driving her crazy. Spock at first seems like he's going to explain to her what's going on and enlist her aid in the subterfuge. But when he sees that she's so stressed out, he kind of gets nervous and says, I'm going to do everything I can to make this right, or I'm going to do my best to please your mother, which is not what T'Pring wanted to hear. So, meanwhile, Christine, Ortiz, and Uhura have taken the shuttle. They're flying close to the wormhole. They're trying to make contact, but the wormhole aliens will not pick up the phone. So finally, they decide they're going to go all the way in and all but crash the shuttle. And they manage to get to the wormhole, the other side of the wormhole, or at least halfway. And they do make contact with one of the wormhole aliens and try to explain what's going on. And then the first wormhole alien goes off, and apparently there's going to be some conference here where they try to figure this out. Meanwhile, T'Pring's parents have arrived, and they've tried to explain that, well, Spock got a little dinged up during this recent shuttlecraft mission, but he's fine. Everything's going to be good. Spock has been groomed on the whole, what to do, what not to do. And Chris, being the ever-present, the amazing cook he is, has prepared some Vulcan delicacies. It's pretty obvious that T'Pring's father, he's a little bit more easygoing when it comes to humans, and he's actually very curious to try Chris's, Vulcan concoctions, and finds it quite pleasing. But of course, T'Pring's mother, not so happy about it, and so he kind of defers to her a lot. So they begin the ceremonies, and Spock is managing to work his way through it, up until he gets to the point where they get to the second ritual, which is when his future mother-in-law lists all the things that are wrong with him. And she actually goes over her time limit on this. Apparently, this is timed. And Spock then has to excuse himself so he can go into the bathroom and initiate the Vulcan screaming into a pillow ritual. Chris, you want to pick it up from there?
So, meanwhile, while all of this is happening, and yes, T'Pring, who is the mom of T'Pring, is the mother-in-law we all wish to avoid. And yeah, like you said, her dad, Savat, he seems like he's a pretty nice guy, but like he is totally dominated by her mom, who is like an absolutist, and is just trying her best to have the ceremony go sideways so she can reject Spock. Meanwhile, working with the aliens, Christine Chapel has to admit that she finally has feelings for Spock, because, encouraged by Ortegas and by Uhura, she says, "Listen, like he's special for me. I don't really know how special, but I just know that it is very special because the aliens ask her, well, before we help you, we have a question too, which is like, why at the last moment did he divert all the shields to protect you rather than him? And she didn't know this, so she's completely taken by surprise. But when she expresses that she has feelings for Spock, apparently this helps answer the question the Wormhole aliens had. And so the next thing you know, Spock is, after the the Vulcan tradition of screaming to the pillow, he goes back in, and Christine Chapel is not there yet, and they're going to do the mind melt ritual, and he knows he can't fake that, and so Pike tries to step in and says, "Well, before we do this, since we're respecting your customs, you have to please respect our customs." And T'Pring just does not want to have any of this. But the dad, Savat's like, no, that's a pretty reasonable request. What is it that you want us to do? And Pike is just like, what am I going to do here? And he looks at Spock's mom, and he's like, we have to do charades. And they're like, we've never heard of this Earth custom. It's like, yes, it's where you describe things. And again, Savat, very curious. He's in on this. He wants to do this more, and probably wants an excuse to have more Pike's food. But yeah, the mom is scorning. She doesn't want to do this. And so there's a knock on the door, and then Christine Chapel shows up, and she has the cure for him. And T'Pring sees them both walk away because he says, "Oh, sorry, this is part of my treatment." And that's the harder, I think, of this episode as well. It's like the love triangle that we have here, and so she's no fool, and she knows something's up. And so Spock is about to admit that perhaps he does have feelings for Chapel when she injects him and says, the feelings, your Vulcan part will come back immediately. The physical changes, like your ears, it's going to take a few hours. Spock successfully completes the final ritual, which was a mind meld, in which he has to describe a memory that his mom had. And so T'Pring is satisfied begrudgingly that he has successfully completed the ritual. And he says, well, despite all your many, how does he say, miscomings, and this just enrages Spock. And Spock says, okay, you know what? I've sort of had it here. You thought that these were rituals that only a pure Vulcan could be able to successfully complete. Well, look at me. I'm a human right now, and this human completed it, and that's probably thanks to my mother. And so later on, you see a scene with the mom in the transporter room where Spock says, that memory that you shared with me was of me having fun playing for the first time with Vulcan children. And then he kind of stops and says, I never realized you were rejected by the Vulcan moms and all the sacrifices you had to make so I could be happy. And she says, it's never easy for a human to love a Vulcan. And at that point, the scene sort of switches to Spock and Nurse Chapel, that Spock's going to go see Nurse Chapel. They're both at the door of one another. He was about to go see her. She was about to come see him. She asked him to come in and says, listen, T'Pring and I are on a break, because right after the scene with the mom, Spock is talking to T'Pring, and T'Pring is really mad because he senses something is going on. And she says, listen, we're supposed to be a couple, but this thing happened and you sought the aid of everyone else except me. You didn't tell me. I think we need to go on a break because you don't trust me, and our relationship has to be based on trust. And Spock informs Nurse Chapel that, yeah, I want a break now. And, I am confused because I have feelings. And she says, I have feelings for you too. And then she just kisses him and says, just shut up. The door closes and scene.
Yep. And that was I got to say that I was a little bit nervous going to this. Because it sounded a little over the top. But when I saw it, and I've watched it twice now, I was very impressed with it. I thought they did a magnificent job with this. So now as we go into the good, the bad, the GORN, I think that at the top of my good things, like you mentioned, was the comedy abilities of Anson Mont and also Ethan Peck and Jess Bush and the rest of the cast of the show. This was a great. They did great. I mean, the chemistry there was, I'm not one for rom-coms, but I had to say I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, the comedy was great. What I really liked was the focus on part of the story on Amanda Grayson, because there's so little really shown about her in the episodes. I mean, everything's about Spock, everything's about the Great Sarek, but you really don't hear that much about Amanda Grayson. And I was so happy that they portray her story as not necessarily being a happy one. I mean, the difficulties that she had. I mean, adapting to the Vulcan culture. I mean, it's all been about Spock's trials, like in the schools and the Vulcan Science Academy. But you have to figure that, like her mom, I mean, his mom did not have it easy either, and she had to learn and she had to adapt. And even when she says, like, son, I'm going to teach you something I said a long time ago, how to lie effectively. I mean, and lying effectively means how to fool Vulcans into making them think that, oh, you're great with this, like you're happy. And the ceremonial teapot is a part of the engagement ceremony where you're supposed to hold a boiling hot kettle and use it to pour tea. And for Vulcans who grow, that's not a problem. They can suppress their emotions. But for humans, it's sort of like walking on hot stones. And she picks up that kettle, no problem. And she looks at Spock and says, "I'm going to teach you this as well." And so there's just so much about Amanda Grayson we don't know. I also like the fact that they reference that she's friends with Pelia, and that although Pelia is not in the ship at that moment, she says, "Yeah, I know her. She's probably trying to go get some weird artifact." So I'm hoping that either this season or next season we get at least one Grace and Pelia episode. But I love the fact that in this episode we saw a lot more of Amanda Grayson, Spock's mom, than we have in decades.
Yeah, we really not delved that much into her character, not since the first time we met her in the classic series episode Journey to Babel, in which she was played by the great Jane Weidman. And she, of course, she does in that episode. And if you, after this episode, I recommend everybody please go back and look up that episode. It's great. It's one of, I think it's one of the underrated episodes of Star Trek. Because you meet Spock's parents in that one. But a lot of the things she went through, and yeah, I think they really did expand on it in this episode, is talking about her, what she went through trying to raise Spock on Vulcan. I mean, yes, obviously Sarek tried to help, but it's Sarek, so what can we expect here? I mean,
there's a reason why they haven't talked for years. In Journey to Babel, we learned that he hasn't spoken to his father in years, and it makes sense he would not be in this episode because they're not speaking to each other, which will last for a very long time.
Right. Yeah. And the fact is, we saw him a couple of times on Discovery, but yeah, I think that was really good that, we didn't have him showing up, and,
it allowed the focus on Amanda, rightfully so.
Right. And we should have, it should have been about mom, and it was, and, she's so good at this. She handles it so well. And the actress who plays Amanda now, I think, does an incredible job. It's not it's a very, I would say it's a hard role, but I'd say it's not an easy one either, because you're basically playing the mom of a legend. How do you approach that, and how do you, how do you think about it?
So, Josh, we have a question from one of our viewers.
Oh, we do.
We do.
Oh, yes. Space Force Girl First, JJ West fans. Is Spock's mom Section 31? Ooh, I don't think so.
I don't know. Can't rule it out.
Can't rule it out, but well, Space Force, thank you for writing in. I appreciate that.
I mean, the ability to lie to Vulcan successfully would be a highly sought out resource for Section 31 operative.
Yeah, but then again, Vulcans are so logical, they probably don't think anybody would lie to them. They probably don't assume people are lying to begin with. I mean, of course, I've never tried to sell a car to a Vulcan, so hard for me to say, but I don't know. Is she been a person of interest to Section 31? That's a possibility too, Space Force. Thank you for mentioning that to us. Please keep those questions coming. We love to hear from our viewers.
Connection to Sarek. I mean, I would not say it's out of the realm of the possible.
Yeah, and Space Force just wrote back to us, just an idea, lots of laughs. Well, that's a good idea.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, there are no bad ideas here.
No bad ideas.
There's, crazy responses, but no bad ideas. So
another thing that I liked about this episode is that everyone got some screen time.
Yeah.
And so I thought this was following up on last week's episode, directed by friend of the show, Eduardo. I thought this was another example of how you can time it just right so that everyone gets like the key moments in the episode. We even had Sam Kirk get some moments in the episode.
Yeah. I gotta admit, Spock losing his patience with him. And,
I will end you, Kirk.
I will end you. It's like, well, I mean, I can kind of relate to that. I get annoyed at people who put dumbbells in the wrong spot at the gym and people who put weight plates in the wrong spots, when they're clearly marked, and it drives me crazy. And I know. I can totally relate to Spock, but yeah, I mean, it's just rude to leave stuff lying around like that,
Have you ended anyone at the gym?
I've been close. Okay. I've been close, they're on the incline, they're on the decline sit-up thing. Suddenly a dumbbell falls about. I don't know what happened,
Accidents.
Accidents happen. We are warned at the gym, but no. That was a great scene, and George Samuel Kirk is such a character. Him and his crazy mustache too. So, I think that's I thought it was really good. And it was great that this goes back, and I keep bringing this up, is, what Leonard Nimoy once said about, every character should have something to do each episode. And we certainly got that with Leon, with Una, with Ortiz, with Uhura, especially with Chapel. Everybody brought their game face to this. And I think we did a great job with this one. I still want the Vulcan, the Star Trek beanie. Yeah.
The triumphant return of the Star Trek beanie, which I am sure come Monday, if not already, will be on sale on StarTrek.com. But the triumphant return of the beanie.
Yeah, we need that. Okay, so anything bad? I didn't really have. Yeah,
Oh, I got a bad. A bad. What is the easiest thing to do on a Federation starship? It's take the bridge. What is the second easiest thing to do? It's to take a shuttle. So what do we have? Yet again, we have people taking the shuttle. I mean, without the captain's approval. I mean, come on. Put some security locks on the shuttles. Put security locks on the bay doors. I mean, you're going to tell me they can launch with, two bridge members of the crew, the pilot, and everyone's like, yeah, okay, we've had a shuttle that already crashed and altered physically the genetics of one of our members of the bridge crew. Now let's just send some more. No, come on. I mean, show me at least some paper resistance to them getting on that shuttle and flying out there. Or at least show me an Ortega saying I'm the bridge crew pilot of the ship, and I am taking this out officially. Stand aside. Just give me something. I mean, it's just again, easiest thing to do, take the bridge. Second easiest thing to do, steal a shuttle. That seems to be hardwired into all of Star Trek.
Yeah, if Odo was in charge of security of that ship, I think things would not be easy to get along with, or at the very least, Odo would just kind of, morph out of a bucket somewhere on the shuttlecraft. But it's a little too easy to get that stuff, and really somebody should put some locks on that. I'll lock up the keys or something. But it would have been at least nice, or or at least to know that, Ortiz just, can just take the shuttle whenever she needs to, or even if they just called up Pike and said real quick, hey, Captain, can we take the shuttle and go back to the wormhole? Because I got an idea. And yeah, it would be nice. But I guess, they have to measure each scene, even if it's just a throwaway scene, but or at least just had a line where Ortiz said that, Pike had given them approval. That would have been fine.
I mean, the other thing, I mean, I loved Amanda Grayson, but I think maybe they're saving it for another episode. But I would have liked to have seen Pelia actually there. I mean, this is the second episode that we have that Pelia is not among. Everyone gets a bit of time on the crew, but not her. Like, I'm unsure if Pelia may be on a pitch count, but you have the chief engineer, but somehow we're not seeing a lot of the chief engineer.
Yeah. You would think, yeah, we would see more of her by now. Oh wait, hang on. We will see the East Indian woman character Lieutenant Rada from Star Trek TOS, played by a real East Indian and not a white. Oh, will we? I'm sorry.
Yeah, will we?
White woman hand up. Don't know. It's a good question. We should look into that. That would be good. I mean, Space Force, I think, makes a really good point there, because I mean, a couple episodes ago, I think we talked about how when we saw young Khan, 5-year-old Khan, that he was played by a South Asian actor, and no, knocking Benedict Cumberbatch or the late great Ricardo Montalban, but it was good to finally see Khan played by an East or South Asian actor. But yeah, no, I think. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
If we do, I think we will, because I think the casting crew and executive producers of this show are much more conscientious of, like, we can't just do the spray tan anymore. We need authenticity, and we need diversity. So I think if we do, I think we will.
It would be. I think it would be great to have more South Asian and also Asian actors in leading parts, and of course, we are going to get some of that when the Section 31 miniseries or movie finally airs on Plus. Hopefully. There's one bad thing, and I'm just going to bring this up. It's a technical issue. Then we'll go into the GORN, but because we have a lot to cover, I think, with the GORN. And I don't know if anybody else had this problem. Anybody did, please let us know. There were a couple times when I had problems with my player. It was something to do with Paramount Plus, and I had to reboot it a couple of times to get it to work. Chris, did you have that problem?
No, not at all. It was smooth sailing.
Okay, well, I noticed it. I only bring it up because it happened twice and was both times on the same scenes. So I did manage to finish watching them, obviously, but it just was like, I don't know. Okay, so moving into the GORN, there were a couple things. One thing I want to ask you first, and then I want to get into the big thing, which is, of course, the strike. But Chris, how do you feel about comedy used in what is supposed to be an otherwise dramatic TV show? I think there's some people who really don't like it, but I'm curious where you fall into this.
Comedy is so much more difficult than drama. I totally am in favor of seeing the use of comedy. Not only does it change the pace, but it allows the actors themselves to extend their chops and to really reach. Anyone who thinks comedy is easy, no, it is really hard. So I like to see that incorporated here, because it allows the actors to stretch, and that provides us with a better product.
Yeah, I think as the old saying goes, dying is easy, comedy is hard. And I think that's very true. But, one other thing, and we've talked about how when Discovery first got started, I'm not knocking Discovery. Any fans of Discovery, please don't assume that. But it seemed more like the writers there were obsessed with trying to make Discovery more of a Battlestar Galactica-like show, with the way the lighting was and the muted colors and everything. and it seemed like there just was not the same, kind of bravado and humor that you got in traditional Trek that, was highlighted throughout. I mean, I don't need it to be the overt comedy kind of style that we saw like in the first Chris Pine Star Trek movie, which several scenes just became slapstick. But I mean, you do need those lighter moments of just light humor, of like, like in the classic episode City on the Edge of Forever, and Edith Keeler walking in on Spock and Kirk while they're working on this computer. And yes, thank you, Space Force Dad. Space Force just pointed out that Trek has always had great humor, which makes it fun. Yes, it does, most definitely. But, as describing was Edith Keeler walking in and them trying to build a computer to read what's on Spock's tricorder. And she says, "What is that?" And Spock says, "I am attempting to construct a mnemonic circuit with stone knives and bear claws." And of course, that episode is otherwise incredibly heavy and dramatic, but it's nice to have that one light moment. And of course, obviously, we can all think of the various episodes with those disgusting little parasites, the tribbles. So, but I think moving from comedy, because we've only got, I think for the balance of our time, I think we need to talk about the real pressing issue that is looking in front of us as fans and also as viewers, the writer and actor strike. We knew the writer strike was going to delay things, but now we have the added issue of the actor strike. Chris, do you want to talk a little bit about what it is the actors are striking about? I think that a lot of people, I'm not sure how much people know about it, really understand it.
Well, first of all, the model of residuals that they're working on now is an old model because it assumes the traditional 21 to 23 episode season. And so when the actors get residuals, it's based on 21 to 23 episodes. It is also based on sales on Blu-ray or DVD, physical sales like that of, like when Best Buy orders 100,000 units to sell, okay, there's 100,000 units, and so from each unit, this is how we distribute the residuals. But streaming has changed that completely. I mean, gone out the door are 21, 23 episode seasons. Now it's 6 or 10 episodes. For example, Secret Invasion is only going to be currently in Disney Plus is 6 episodes. So now you have actors and writers with a smaller amount of episodes per season, and so they're asking for more money, rightfully so. Also, the studios are claiming that they can't track in streaming how many people are streaming something as opposed to the sale of a DVD or Blu-ray, and so that prevents actors and writers from receiving the funds that they rightfully should for people who are purchasing these. And even more insidious is the fact that one of the proposals from the studios was that they would bring people in for background work. Background work, anyone who's not familiar, is all the extras in the background scene. They wanted to bring them in for one day, scan their image, and then use them in perpetuity, which is great for them because then they have a built-in background scene of people. They don't have to feed, they don't have to pay, so they save a lot of money there. But not so great for background actors who, let's face it, a lot of actors don't have speaking roles. I mean, a lot of them start off as like background actors. That's how they break in. That's how they get used to being on a set. In the air, and also writers are rightfully concerned that studios could turn to AI to start writing scripts. I mean, is it going to happen immediately? No. But 5 or 10 years, AI might be advanced enough to start writing scripts, and then all of a sudden, again, you don't have to pay writers, you don't have to pay benefits. So this is a really crucial time, and both unions have stood up and said, yeah, we need to draw the line here. It would have been better, I think, if the Directors Guild had also held the line and joined them. They did not, but just to show how the gravity of the situation, writers and actors had not struck together in 63 years. The last time this happened, Marilyn Monroe was acting in movies, And Ronald Reagan was head of SAG. And I know this might seem like incredible to think Ronald Reagan led a strike, but yes, he did.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure he was still a very active actor, and it affected him personally. Um, yeah, so I, of course, yeah, yeah, people forget before he was governor of California and then president, and before he also dismantled the air traffic controllers union, he was himself a labor leader. And Space Force writes in, the strike could be a good thing, media detox. Well, okay, yeah, there's that, but I think, and that's a good point, Space Force. Thank you for bringing it up. Is that some people, might need a little bit of downtime, but also I think it's a good thing because I think those of us who are in labor, who work, well, you and I both, it's a good time to rebuild our unions, to I think really say to people, hey, our bosses, you can't push us around anymore. We're not going to take this. A friend of mine posted something about once you start to say it is what it is, things become easier. Well, no, I had to disagree with my friend on that, because if you just say it is what it is, you just means you've just given up and you're not going to hope for anything better. Well, if we go back to Deep Space Nine here for a second, and the story Miles O'Brien told about his ancestor, who was a labor leader in Ireland, who died on the picket lines. Labor is important. Labor, this is why we have weekends. This is why we have paid medical leave. This is why we have paid vacations. This is why we have retirement benefits and other things. It's because some people stood out on a picket line on a hot day or a freezing day or whatever, and demanded those rights and stopped production of the goods and services that somebody else was making money off of. Because yeah, let's face it, these producers, the network executives, the higher ups, they're getting paid tons of money. And meanwhile, yeah, okay, sure, there are a lot of actors and actresses who make a living, but it's really difficult. And if they suddenly are making less money, not only does that mean that they may not be, if they're under contract, they can't go make a movie, or, they have to get another job, which may not be, not necessarily an acting job or a high paying commercial job, but, a job. I mean, I don't know how many people would really want to see Anson Mount deliver, working for Uber on the weekends. I certainly don't think that should be done.
I mean, people deserve to get paid fairly, and you have most of actors and writers in a place of a very high cost of living, which is California, especially Los Angeles, and you have writers who can't afford to pay their mortgage, while you have heads of studios flying private jets to private resorts, where they're discussing how can we increase shareholder value. Oh, let's claim poverty. I mean, the perception of the heads of studios of what life is completely out of touch with what life really is for your everyday actor, writer, special effects person, grip. These are the people who make the movie. I mean, too much emphasis is like, oh yeah, we've got all these celebrities and these stars, and no doubt they are what bring people in. But what makes the movie are the actors in the background, are the technicians, the craft food services, the carpenters who build the sets. I mean, it's a whole army of people that allow the movie to be made, and they deserve to be paid fairly.
Right. Yeah. And they should definitely not be forgotten. Yeah. Los Angeles is an incredibly expensive place to live, as is Atlanta, Georgia, where a lot of things are being made. Just want to say, Space Force wrote in, AI wars are coming, the rise of the machines, me fighting my toaster, ding, ding. Hang in there, Space Force. We're with you. And Nathan Rada writes in, cool. And Space Force agrees, I think, says, well said. It's about a piece of the action. And it is. the thing people forget is the network executives, the studios are going to continue to make money on these products that they've made on Star Trek, on Star Wars, on Yellowstone, any one of the hundreds of TV shows and movies they make. And a lot of these actors and actresses have depended for decades on residuals that every time that episode continued to be shown on a syndicated television station somewhere in this country or somewhere around the world, they were still getting a little bit of money from that to help them along.
And by the way, Josh, the system of residuals came from the strike 63 years ago when writers and actors all strike together. Without that, as you pointed out, they wouldn't even have this.
Exactly. And I mean, it's not like, I don't think Adam West was himself necessarily getting rich off of Batman reruns, but he was still able to support himself. He was still doing well enough that, he could at least hang in there till movie offers came along. But it's just not right for these people to continue to make money off of this product and then not pass it on to the people who actually did the work. I mean, I'm just going to quote the great Abraham Lincoln. Labor is more important than capital. Yes, thank you for wearing that shirt today.
He was a great Vulcan.
He was. Yes, I agree. We should have got a close-up of that shirt. You need to wear that. There we go. Very nice. Yeah. In fact, actually, now going forward, of course, there could be, I think we were talking offset about how Comic-Con is still coming up. And a lot of the actors are not going to be able to be there because of the strike, because they cannot promote stuff right now. That's part of this, and that's going to be difficult for the cons. I was told that apparently because Jonathan Frakes is also a director, there's a kind of a carve out for him coming to Fairfax Comic-Con at the end of August. Now, regardless, I think we should still go to the cons and try to support them, whether or not there's actors or not. But at the same time, I think we need to, as fans, make it very obvious to the people that are making shows that like Star Trek or the Marvel shows, we support them in some way.
So I think the next 2 weeks regarding cons appearances are going to be very tricky. Vincent D'Onofrio went public yesterday saying that the union needs to provide guidelines for appearing at cons because so many people appear at cons now, much more than, let's say, 10 or 15 years ago. And, I think at the start, the next two big, San Diego Comic-Con aside, which no one can go to because, I should take that back. Anyone who went there paid by a studio can no longer attend. Private conventions such as the upcoming Tampa Bay Comic-Con or GalaxyCon and Rally, I think are going to be the canary in the coal mine to see what can or can't be done. Yeah. For example, if actors do decide to show up, and I think at least at the start, many will probably just decide not to. Like Tampa Bay Comic-Con was supposed to have 3 of the Hobbits, Dominique Monaghan, Sean Astin, and Benedict. Blanking on the name for a second, but they are all listed now as postponed, which sort of implies like, yeah, they're going to be there, but just later. No, they're not showing up. So I think at the start, you're going to see some people without guidelines just skipping them altogether. If they do show up, they won't be able to sell any pictures of them or provide any pictures at their table of them in character, because in character would be promoting a show that's promoting a studio, so they can't do that. At best, it would be headshots, publicity headshots. But like, what do you do if someone brings their own picture of you in a character on a show? What if someone brings you a Funko? Like, what's going to happen with British actors? Like, I'm thinking Dragon Con, like Jodie Whittaker is part of the British union. They're not governed by SAG. She technically could if she wanted to show up and sign pictures of her as Doctor Who. You have the issues with like Jonathan Frakes coming up to Fairfax Comic-Con. Like, he couldn't show up as an actor, but he could show up as a director because, again, the Directors Guild approved their deal. So how would he avoid talking about Picard as an actor versus talking to us about a director? I mean, it's a slippery slope. And I think the Tampa Bay Comic Con and GalaxyCon are going to be the canary in the coal mine, as I said, to see like so actors can see what others are doing before they decide if they can start going to cons again. I think it's really going to hurt some of the smaller actors who make a handsome, profitable earning from attending cons. And I think the winner, I think two things are going to happen. One, I think we're going to see some of the smaller cons cancel because I think some of the guests will just say, until I know what I can do, I'm going to play it safe and not show up. Um, but I sort of weirdly, I think winners here might be comic book artists and writers and illustrators because if cons want to continue moving forward, they'll probably ask more of them to come in place of the celebrities.
Yeah, that's a possibility. I mean, I'm still going to go to Fairfax Comic Con regardless. Space Force just added Hollywood might want the model they have in the UK media, far less pay, everything else just street food truck. Yeah, that I'm really glad you brought that up, Space Force, because that does go to something else. There was a network executive, Chris, you might remember, who said this, or is alleged to have said this. I don't want to start anything, but they said that, yeah, this whole thing's about trying to break the backs of the unions, trying to force them to accept the deal, that they'll hang in there, that the studios could just hang in there longer, and that the actors and writers will just give in and accept whatever they're given. And I'm personally of the opinion that no, I don't give a damn about Bob Iger as a person or as a network executive. This person they make billions of dollars. He just came back out of retirement to run Disney after recent events there. And I don't really think that I don't care about the people who run who are the executives and run the studios. I care about the Anson Monts, the Matt Smiths, the Ethan Pecks, the Patrick Stewarts, the Jonathan Frakes, the Jess Bushes, and all the other people that make Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who, Marvel shows, Marvel movies, DC movies, whatever. I care about their welfare, and I want them taken care of first before Bob Iger or anybody else. Well, them and also the people that went in there and wrote the music, built the sets, worked as extras, made the food, whatever. They all deserve to be taken care of over the network execs.
So I think this strike is going to go long. I don't think it's going to be ended up shortly because there's a lot of play. I think the local economies of Los Angeles, Vancouver, Toronto, New York, Georgia, places where you have a lot of filming are going to hurt because, again, there's a ripple effect. It's not just the actors. It's like carpenters, it's caterers. We talked about Uber, the people who do Uber. I mean, it's going to be a huge ripple effect on local economies. Now, how is it going to affect Star Trek specifically? Well, I don't think immediately we're going to really see that much of an effect because Star Trek Discovery is already in the can. It's already filmed, and they're holding it. Maybe the great Ferengi, that's Paramount, recognized that this could possibly happen, so they wanted something in the pocket to show next year when there's not going to be a lot of like new content. So that's in the bag. Obviously, Strange New World Season 2, we're watching it right now. We still got 5 more episodes. Not enough, by the way. I am going to guesstimate that Lower Decks is already filmed and ready to go. So this is going to affect when we see a Star Trek Strange New World Season 3. Yes, it's going to be much later, I think, in 2024. But immediate effect on Star Trek viewing habits? Not so much, I think.
Well, obviously, I think it's going to affect the production on the Section 31 miniseries movie. It's going to affect a lot of the other plans they supposedly made in regards to Legacy and Starfleet Academy and other things.
But that's long term. Short term, it's going to be business as usual because things will film. But right. 24, and I think it was sadly smarter than to keep now Discovery in the can to pop it out in the beginning of 24. But yeah, newer shows, new seasons of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, we're not going to see those until later in 24.
Well, just to wrap up here, Space Force agreed with us and what we said well said. Thank you, Space Force, for contributing. We hope you'll come back again next week when we talk more about other stuff. So as we get ready to bring her into the space dock, Chris, you want to tell us any predictions or any hopes you have for Strange New Worlds itself?
I am delighted that Spock and Nurse Chapel have now become sort of the newest couple on the ship. So I predict that we are going to see more consequences of the fallout of this, hopefully positive, in the remaining second half of the season for Strange New Worlds. Because it really, the show just kicks into another gear when you have the Spock and Nurse Chapel relationship. So I think we're going to see more of that. I think at some point we really got to go back to the Gorn, because that first episode at the end, Spock is saved from probably being court-martialed because they're concerned about a war with the Gorn. And the other thing that I predict for the second half of the season, there's just not enough time left in the season, is we will see again Captain Angel, and we will see Sybok. And I think somehow this might involve T'Pring, since he's in charge of the rehabilitation facility where Sybok is. So I'm predicting Gorn, more of Nurse Chapel and Spock, and a Captain Angel / Sybok appearance.
Yeah, I want to build off the Sybok thing. I would really love to see an episode where T'Pring is talking with Sybok and maybe laying the date night for Spock. That is Sybok. Are we going to find out that maybe Sybok is the real reason that T'Pring broke up with Spock in the Amok time? Did she really start to develop feelings for Stan, who is her assistant right now? Or was Sybok sowing the seeds there? I almost wish they could do a flash forward to something that maybe took place after Spock's 5-year mission with Kirk, the first 5-year mission with Kirk, and then we find out that Sybok had something to do with the dissolving of his relationship with T'Pring. But
I think the seeds have definitely been planted in this episode.
I think you're right, and I think Sybok might just water those seeds. Okay, so now that we're wrapping up, Chris, you want to remind everybody where we can find you?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking, Josh. People can find me on Instagram, Vivid Cosplay. If you're a cosplayer in the DC area, come check out my gram, because it's quite possible you're on it.
And you can find me at Josh Pritchett Jr. on Facebook. I'm also the head of the Northern Virginia Star Trek Meetup group, which you can find us on meetup.org or on our Facebook page at the Northern Virginia Star Trek Meetup. And also my new book, The Adventures of Madison Brown, The Robot Repair Girl Chronicles, is available on Amazon and Kindle. Please do check it out. It really means a lot to me. I've worked very hard. It's a collection of young adult science fiction stories centered around a young woman named Madison Brown. And I'm proud to report I sold 35 copies of it last weekend at Shore Leave. Oh, before we go, Space Force Strikes, next time, talk about the bowling alley on the Enterprise. Do they have bowling teams? Good question again. Thank you, Space Force. Yes, I think we should bring that up. So, with that said, catch y'all later. Good luck. Thank you, Space Force. Please tune in again next week, same time, same Star Trek channel. I'm Josh Pritchett.
I'm Chris Pabon. Shout out to our friend of the show, Robert Burns. Had a birthday yesterday. Happy birthday,
Yes.
Bob.
Happy birthday, Bob. We love you.
Shout out to Otakon, which will be happening in 2 weeks, where I will hope to see a lot of you there. Until then, peace and long life.
Live long and eat bacon.
And eat bacon. Bacon makes everything better.
Bye-bye, everybody.